This is me, the Al-K-Lra player. This is you, the Livy Dress player. The return of the long-awaited card review videos. Welcome back, everyone. We are here now that lyrical season is done, and we are here to talk about Set 4. So Set 4 is coming out in just about 2 weeks here in Japan. It's actually way sooner than most of us expected. And so they've been revealing quite a few cards for some time now. And as we did during Set 3, myself and Jason, sitting in the background, are going to be looking at and discussing. There's been quite a lot revealed, actually more than we expected. So we're going to kind of like pick and choose which ones we want to really focus on and talk about. Any thoughts, Jason, from just in general, from what we've seen so far about the set?
I think it's kind of like less hype than the set before, but we are getting like supports there and after. And like we'll go through it like Barrow and stuff. Like some of the units that we didn't expect are getting support. So I think it's kind of good, but also at the same time, you don't get this kind of deck in hand already. Like you might also actually like take a rest and see like what supports, like the generic stuff. Do you want to pick them up or just kind of like wait and see more before? Yeah, that's what I feel like now for what we have seen.
I think so as well.
Yeah,
like this set is interesting because a lot of old archetypes got supported, and then of course basically each nation gets a new deck more or less. So for example, there was like a Flamgram support that was a double rare that they got, which is a Energy Blast 4 on call to search for a Flamgram and call it, which I guess helps to set up and also just to have good columns. I think the Vanguard deck is kind of like, it did feel like it was missing just a little bit, and I guess this maybe gives it that little bit.
But sadly, we both didn't really play the Vanguard decks, so it's kind of like we actually like for at least for me, I actually don't know how. Even as a lyrical player, sadly, I actually didn't play it, so I actually don't know what is lacking. But we know it's lacking something, so it's kind of feel like it does need a support, and it doesn't really get any support from the lyrical set as well. So
probably because of this.
Yeah, so I guess that's why they put this in here.
Then Bruce got a really good triple rare, so the Eli. So it's actually very good because it's a Energy Blast 3 if you have a Diablo's Vanguard, so it can be either one of the Bruces. Lets you look at top 7, find 2 Diablo's normal units, which I mean is like basically the entire deck, and then you call one and put the other one to soul. So the one you call has to be a grade that is equal to or lower than your Vanguard, which means you can actually call this on your grade 2 turn, which Bruce usually doesn't really have much to do in the early game, which is kind of nice. Like now you could actually develop an early board and build up soul as well, which means that your first grade 3 turns with both Bruces are pretty easy. Although I guess the other, like the final burst Bruce didn't really have any issues. If you're in final rush, he gets boost. If you're in final burst, he gets 5k during both players' turns. So it's like pretty good. I think overall, like this one card being revealed led to a lot of people like making Twitter combos and stuff, showing off a bunch of combos, because there was another card that it got as a shop promo a little bit ago, and that card was like, it allowed to push stuff from back row to front row, so kind of like essentially extend attacks.
Yeah.
So, and this just gives you a searcher, gives you plus, which like Bruce didn't really, it had like a couple cards here and there, but nothing this free. Like Energy Blast 3 is pretty free for 2 cards.
Basically no cost.
Yeah. Pretty good. I think I haven't played Bruce in a while. I used to enjoy it quite a lot, but kind of fell off a little bit, so I haven't been playing it as much. Then we're going to skip all the way ahead to the Resel support. So Resel got a triple rare support, but it's a grade 0, which kind of invites you to play it as a starter. But of course, if you go second, it doesn't give you the draw. So what it does is it's grade 0 with 6k power, that when it's placed on rear, if your Vanguard's Resel, then you give a unit plus 5k. And if this card was placed by your Vanguard's ability, then you give 10k instead. So it's like a free 10k distribution when being called, despite being lower power himself. And then in the back row rearguard circle, if your Vanguard is Resel, he gets intercept and can intercept from the back row. Is this good enough?
Yeah.
Especially to be a triple rare. Like this feels like a one of. It feels like you just run this as your starter instead and like soul blast it at like record high speed.
Yeah.
And you don't really do much else with it. So it really feels like, I don't know, like if this was a rare, I wouldn't have been surprised.
Yeah.
But triple rare?
Yeah.
Feels a bit weird. I remember I was sick when this. Was I sick or was I? There was something preventing me from streaming
and
that week.
You're either sick or you have the super busy week, I guess.
Yeah, it was one of the two. One of the two. Yeah, this was not a very hype card.
Like I like how they make great zero cards that has effect and interesting, but this is not a triple rare card that we need in Resel.
No, I really don't think so.
Yeah.
But on the other end, you know, the rival character, Blankmire, did get a cool support. So a grade 2 that says, when placed other than battle phase on rear, Soul Charge 1, CB1, you choose a grade 2 or lower from your soul that is different name from him, call it to rear. So again, you have to keep in mind, you're Soul Charging 1 for free, and that's not restricted to Blankmire. Then you CB1 and call something is also not restricted to Blankmire. And then it says, if your Vanguard is not Blankmire, then at the end of the turn, the called unit goes back to Soul. So it, again, is one of these kind of like somewhat generic effects where it's like, you can Soul Charge 1, CB1, call something, it'll go back, but in some decks, you know, like in Pale Moon, you don't mind this. In Harry, when it comes out, you won't mind this either, because that whole deck's gimmick is that, basically, that like call stuff out from Soul, goes back in. So, it's not bad already. And then also, if you, for every 4 cards in your face down, bind, it gets plus 10k. So for every 4, so that means that it's going to be like a free 30k without Persona, like on turn 4, basically.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. This one card does feel like it does quite a lot for Blankmire, and also like you have a lot of cards that deck thin, but the plussing cards were maybe a little bit low, so this feels like it adds a cool element of plussing, and also being able to like use Falkrashia to like recycle stuff back into your soul from drop, and then use this to call that out again. So you can kind of like play one turn in advance with this card as well.
Yeah. For me, it's like I like the fact that if go back to soul if you don't have that mana. So when you use, especially now the matchup against Shoujo Doji and what's it called again?
Shirane.
Yeah, Shirane, right? My brain just stopped. Yeah,
removed it.
Yeah, I just doesn't like the like phrasing it, so I just removed it from my brain. But like when you face both of this, you actually don't want anything on your board.
Yeah.
So like it goes back to the soul. Actually, is like sometimes it's an advantage in this kind of matchup.
Could be good.
Yeah.
Could be good. So Blankmire got a really cool card, so I definitely rated quite highly. We're gonna skip a bit all the way ahead to the Barrow stuff. Barrow got a lot of stuff, and I guess the main thing is that the ride line got changed. So now it's like the grade 1 basically says when it's written over, you Soul Charge 2, give Vanguard 5k. So that makes the Vanguard easier to hit on turn 2. The grade 2 says when written over by Barrow, Soul Charge 2, and then choose a grade 3 or lower from Soul and call it. So it's like, it generates advantage. Also, they both give a lot of soul. And then the Barrow itself is basically, for each Barrow in your soul, he gets plus 5k during your turn. People don't like this effect because it means that you have to run the old Barrow, which people don't want to do. And then his Vanguard effect, the on-attack effect, got reworked in an interesting way too, where it's like, now when he attacks, he CBs 1 and then does stuff depending on how much soul you have. So if you have 10 or more, you draw 1, get a crit. So that's okay for CB1, you get the draw at least. But optimally, you want to be doing this when you have more than 10 souls. So when you have 15 or more, then you choose any number of yours and your opponent's rear guards, and you put those to soul, and then you choose up to 2 cards from your soul, call them to rear, and they get plus 10k for the turn. So this is already kind of interesting because Barrow did have rears that disappear, kind of like they go to soul after their attack and stuff. And so this is kind of cool because you get to touch your opponent's board. And in the past, it was like, this was the put both players' fields into soul, and I think it was compulsory to do that.
Yeah, it's AoE, yeah.
So, whereas now it's like you can choose how much you want to put back. So if you don't want to feed your opponent their soul to pay for cost, you can choose not to and just do it yourself to do 5 attacks, which I guess is pretty good, and the plus 10k is appreciated. And then if you have 20 or more soul, then he basically says to your opponent that whenever they would call Guardians, they have to call 3 from the hand at the same time. So that is also, but it's only during Barrow's battle, not during the entire turn. Would be a bit insane if it was, but you do have a way to enable 2 or more at the same time for the entire turn. So I don't know. I think a lot of people expected a bit more from him. Like when you think about it, like it's a very flashy effect, but it does need a good advantage engine around it in order to justify it. And it did get some of that a little bit. Like there's the double rare Shuerin. She's like, when placed from hand on rear, you can show the Barrow Magnus in your ride deck, or if you have Barrow Magnus Vanguard, to choose a card from drop, put it to soul, and then she gets plus 5k basically if you have a Barrow Magnus Vanguard. Also, when she is placed into soul from rear by your Barrow's effect, then she lets you draw 1 for free. which is like, that's cool, you generate a bit of hand, but it also just feels like you essentially get to recycle a card from drop, so you get a free soul, and you also get a card to hand, but it's only when she's put from rear to soul, so you want to be targeting her from, you know,
Your
the
Barrow effects,
effect. So it's like you're still losing a card by putting a rear to soul in a sense, but it's better than, you know, overcalling it. So at least it kind of works in that sense. So like that card's pretty okay. There's a grade 1 that reduces the CB, and then there's the grade 3, which when placed on rear, soul charges 1, gets 5k, unless you CB1 to choose. Oh yeah, it's the one that like prevents deck out basically. But so it's like in the end, it's only one card that actually gives you advantage. Which just feels like not enough. So I don't know.
I feel like the new Barrow doesn't. You can choose not to put the back row into your soul. So like you can skip like bring Wstra or something that still on the field helps a lot compared to the old Barrow. But compared to modern deck, is it enough now? It's kind of sus.
A modern deck would have allowed you to like just stand the swirler. It's like it would have been like call 2 and then stand 2 rears or something, and then your swirlers restand, and it's like you're swinging like a truck 5 times. But now it's like you have to choose which of your attacks you don't want to give that extra power up to. Which is like, I don't know. It's a bit strange.
It feels still very sus. Like the new cards, like you probably just put that in soul and then you call something from soul to do your 4 and 5 attack. But other than that, it doesn't like 5 swing deck now that does way more stuff in the modern deck. So still a bit sus.
Alright, then moving forward, the first big divine skill reveal was basically Livy Dress. So the entire red line is pretty interesting. The support cards are also interesting. A lot of the stuff it has is pretty cool. So basically the gimmick of the deck is that it gives out the Infinity Eyes marker. So it lets you do this by the Act skill, which basically lets you choose one of your rearguard circles and your opponent's rearguard circles and put the marker on there. You can also stack them. It doesn't prevent you from not stacking them. And then the Divine skill, as long as your opponent's on grade 3 or greater, also allows you to choose one of each player's circles and put the marker on there and give the Vanguard 10k and a crit for the turn. And then basically what happens with the markers is that whenever you would attack or your opponent would attack, you can choose a unit that is on the marker and either give it plus 10k or minus 10k. And if you gave your opponent's unit minus 10k, then you remove the marker from that circle and you get to draw a card. And that effect is not once per turn. So you basically turn the markers in your opponent's side into a debuff. So they're basically losing 10k power, which means that you're also saving on cards in hand from guarding them. And you're gaining cards because you're also removing the markers too. So it's at the same time you're powering up your own stuff. So it does feel like in theory this is a very strong mechanic, just because it's also like you have multi-attack from your rear guards, which is very strong. The ride line basically lets you like ride without discarding, and the grade 2 basically is like Energy Blast 3, look at top 5 for a grade 3 or lower. So it's like very generic. So any good generic grade 3, like, you know, the Inlet Pulse basically just fits into this very easily. So just like the support is something that can make this deck infinitely better, and it's already pretty good. It's like you basically have a grade 1 that allows you to, it's like the special booster that has to be behind Vanguard that essentially says like you can CB1 and give one of your back row rearguards the 10k and ability attack from back row. So then you're kind of playing very similar to Magnolia Elder as she did 2 years ago. And then it also has a grade 2 triple rare that's like Energy Blast 3 on place as long as your opponent as long as there's a marker in the same column as this unit. To look at top 2, add 1 to hand, we'll put the rest to bottom and get 5k. But then a lot of the other effects, they require you to have 3 markers on the field. So that means, like, for example, this one second effect was like during your turn, if you have a Livy Dress Vanguard and you have 3 or more markers, then he gets plus 5k. And as long as you don't have another copy of him in the same column, then he can attack from the back row. You essentially, a lot of the extra effects and the bonuses come from having 3 markers. And the people that have been playtesting this deck have been kind of saying it's like, oof, the 3 markers actually make it a little bit tough because you have to, like, at the earliest, it's turn 4 whether you're going first or going second. But going first, you're only putting down 1 marker. So it's like, I mean, it would be a bit too much, I guess, if you were putting down 2 immediately. So in that sense, a lot of those, like, extra effects you have to wait for. But luckily, a lot of the extra effects aren't, like, when placed. So that means you can play down a card, use the first effect even if you don't have 3 markers, and then the bonus effect will come from later, just from the card staying on the field. But then if you're playing against removal decks, it's like you are putting that unit at risk. What's interesting is that so far all the divine skill units from the set each have a order. The Livy Dress's order is actually very good. It's like Energy Blast 2 to play it, and then you choose a card from drop and call it, as long as it's same or lower grade than your Vanguard. And then if you, for each marker in the same column as the called unit, it gets plus 5k. So it's like, it's a virtually free revive that can revive a lot of good cards, like the back row attackers, or your like inlet pulse if you're playing it. And it also provides it power. So the thing attacking from the back, you know, it's like you can't boost with it, but you can buff it with like the markers, or you can buff it with this order. So the rad line feels like, you know, overall the rad line feels like it has a lot of potential, and the support so far is pretty okay. But a lot of people are saying it's like there's just a little bit missing. Could use a little bit more to have that extra oomph.
Yeah.
But chances are next set is going to get it.
Yeah.
So I think it's already looking okay. But I do agree that maybe you could have used a little bit more. But maybe it's okay not to give it that much more just yet and just wait for the next set.
I guess it feels like it's also the early game is kind of like mid as well.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. People that were testing it said like, man, there's nothing to do early because you don't have any markers and you don't have Livy Dress Vanguard either, which all of these effects need.
Yeah, every effect needs the marker or the Vanguard. So like basically you just swing and pass in your first 2 turns. It's kind of lame in this modern meta now as well, when there's so many decks that just aggro you in the early game, and then you go into turn 3 with 4 damage and like, what am I going to do with the marker now?
Exactly.
And then you still don't have the free markers if you're going for like on the first grade 3 turn as well.
Yeah, right.
And like with 4 damage there, you're pretty much like you
cooked.
can't. You're cooked.
Yeah, so
okay.
it's
That's the hard part for this deck, I feel like.
Yeah, so you know, Stoichia is a very generic card pool, so but you don't really. I guess you could theoretically play Rorowa Radline in this and then just play Broccoli. That's the answer to all your problems. But because it's like the Radline's good, but it doesn't do anything like searches a specific order like in Brandgate, how we often have.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything crazy. It's just like you ditch one less card and then just like top 5 or something. So
the answer could be Rorowa Radline and Broccoli. I'm just saying. That could be the answer to all your problems. So overall, I think the early impression of the deck is like, it's probably fine, and I think people will probably cook up something pretty decent with it, so I'm not too worried. Evangarda support got revealed, and it looked pretty miserable, so I don't really even want to talk about it too much. Like, the double rare is the soul saving grace, I guess, where she's like, she gets 5k every time your Vanguard attacks, so you have another strong attacker.
The art looks really good.
Yeah, the art is good. And when she's placed on rear or discarded by your Vanguard's effect, you can Energy Blast 3 to choose a strategy from your drop and add it to your hand. I kind of... the fact that it's just strategy back to hand is like, it's fine, I guess. You don't have to run any like Brandgate generics to get your orders back now. But I kind of wish she did a bit more, I guess. I don't know. I feel like Evangarda hasn't had support in so long, and it could have gotten something a bit more. Yeah. Because it feels like some of the other Brandgate decks like Heroes and Eva and Archive all got these like life-changing support cards. Yeah. And Evangarda got like a card that it would have had last year. It's like this. It feels like the cards I got last year were better. Yeah. So
it's just basically the magazine promo.
Yeah.
To be honest,
like a worse version of it. But then Varga got a very cool triple rare, which basically is a on-call. If you have Varga Vanguard, Energy Blast 3, look at top 5, find a grade 2 or lower, call it to rear, and shuffle your deck. So a lot of people were like, whoa, deck thinning in Varga. That sounds pretty crazy, because that means you can compress. The only issue is it's top 5, and that does mean, it's like, for some reason when I first read this effect, I thought it was search your entire deck for a grade 2 or lower, and I was like, wow, that's insane. And then I reread it, I was like, oh, it's top 5? Never mind. It's like, you'd have to, it's like, because it's grade 2 or lower, it means you can find your, like, Rokusei and, like, your grade 1s and stuff. But if you can find, like, a Shura, that's pretty good. And then he also says, like, when he's retired by your Varga's effect, he, you know, if your opponent's on grade 3, he gives your Vanguard plus 5k for the turn. But it also means that if you're calling this on your first grade 3 turn, if you're going first, it's like, you don't get anything out of him either from being retired. So it also feels like another one of those, like, the compression sounds good, but we also have a lot of cards that use energy in Varga. So do we really want to be fighting for that? Is it worth to cut gun cyclers for this?
And
not sure.
like the hard part, like himself is also a grade 3, so like you can't call himself with the effects.
Yes.
And then grade 3 doesn't have shield compared to like Guncycler, you draw 1 and also a 5k shield.
Yeah.
It's pretty tough to like take, like when you take out the Guncycler and put this in, you're gonna question yourself.
Yeah. It's a bit tough.
Yeah.
I think this card, my first impression of it was really, really good, but now it's like after thinking about it for a while and like reading the very specific restrictions, like the second effect needing your opponent to be on grade 3, my impression changed a little bit. It's a little bit going down a tiny bit. Then we basically get to this week's reveal. So we're recording this on a Wednesday, so we don't know the Thursday reveals just yet. But Wstra got a very good new card in the Fenrita, drawn by Fujichoko Sensei. Thank you as always for your hard work. I like how even like my Pokemon friends were like, "Oh my god, Fujichoko draws art for Vanguard. That's crazy." You know, like always has been.
Yeah.
This one is actually pretty insane. This is like the first, like so far they've been revealing cards, and I was like, yeah, this Blankmire one's kind of good. It's like, oh, the Resel one's kind of mid. It's like nothing really got a crazy reaction out of me. This one I really like. This one is like when this card is ditched from hand during ride phase or main phase, you get to call her out. And then she has an act effect that lets you once per turn, as long as you have a Wstra Vanguard, EB4, which is completely fine in Wstra because we're normally every turn, like every grade 3 turn going first or going second, you are EB7 draw a card. So you always had energy, so EB4 is nothing. And so you EB4, you choose a card in your order zone, and as long as it's a grade equal to or lower than your opponent's Vanguard, then you get to operate it, and for that turn, that product's original operate effect cost goes down by CB1. So what this means is that going first is like, you don't really make use of the CB because you're just basically operating Lubiltal to look at top 5 colon. But it's EB4 to top 5 colon, which is still very good in my opinion. And then going second, you can actually do EB4, target your maximum, retire something, and then the maximum call effect goes down by CB1, which is crazy because each counterblast in the Wstra is a contribution to your attacks. So you get to do more attacks thanks to that. So that's already insane. The fact that this pops out is also very, very good. So I'm super impressed by this card. It's definitely deserving to be a triple rare.
Yep.
And probably the first triple rare in this set that really feels insane. I guess the Livy Dress stuff also looked pretty good, but
Yeah.
this one was so impressive. It's also the fact that this deck has energy to spare.
Yeah,
because
right.
of the new product
Yeah.
is what makes it even better. So I'm a
Yeah.
huge fan of this card.
Yeah.
Honestly, like dream come true levels of amazing. Probably like the most. This one reveal is like the most motivated I've been to play Wstra probably ever. It's like I was already like, yeah, Wstra's kind of fun. You get to do combos and stuff.
Nice.
But this one is like, wow, this changes a lot. This makes it even more exciting.
And this is even why it makes the Evangarda support like
Yes.
so disappointed. Like they are the same blank gate deck, and why like
How?
Wstra get this while the Evangarda is so like normal.
How could you let this happen? We should have. But yeah, I'm very impressed with it. But then I was also, dude, this Tuesday gave us everything that I would be happy with. Because I was really worried about the new Dragon Empire outline. Al-K-Lra is the divine skill unit for Dragon Empire, and I was very excited for this one because I like how it looks. It reminds me, like, especially when we saw the ride line, it reminds me of an old Vanguard deck that's in Evolve, the Blazing Flare Dragon. But I was just like, Kyoma as a character, he's a cool dude with a suit. Easy. It's like what is the like? I feel like in Japan they say where it's you want to be a guy that's popular with guys, not a guy that's popular with girls. Because guys like the guy that's popular with guys. Something like that. So Kyoma is one of those.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the Vanguard itself is very simple, and that had me a little bit concerned. So you Soul Blast 2, choose 3 of your own rear guards, give them 5k for the turn, and then he has this gimmick called Overcharge, which is literally like, it's back in G we had a gimmick called Burst that was kind of similar, I would say, where what Overcharge says is that when this card is selected by your Vanguard's ability, it activates an effect. So he says you choose 3 rear guards, and if you chose 2 or more rear guards with the Overcharge ability, then you draw 1, and he himself gets 10k. So he's already 23 on his own and draws a card for Soul Blast 2, which is pretty good. And his Divine skill, as long as your Vanguard's opponent's on grade 3, you counterblast 1, choose 2 rear guards, give them 5k, and if your opponent's on 4 or less damage, you deal them a damage, and if they damage check a trigger by this effect, then the trigger's effect gets minus 10k. And I immediately here was like, why doesn't it just nullify the trigger? You know, because if they check OT, your turn ends. Like, what's the point of making your columns hit for 50k if they just hit OT from your divine skill? So that's just one complaint. Just let me have that. But the ride line's really cool. Even the grade 0 looks sick. Like, the grade 0 looks really dope. The grade 1 looks really cool. It's the same as the Varga ride line. So it pops out when you ride over it. Soul charges 1, and when chosen by your Vanguard's ability, it gets 10k, which is like pretty insane. Even going first, he gets 10k. So it's like you get an 18k booster. The grade 2 looks super sick too. When you ride over him, you look at top 3, find a grade 3 or lower, add it to your hand, put the rest at bottom. If you added an overcharge ability card, you soul charge 1. So you use soul, of course, for your Vanguard's ability. So this is really nice. I think like the ride line is pretty, like, it doesn't add a crazy amount, so you know, you could also run the Yugioh ride line, or at least like the grade 1 if you wanted, but that uses soul, so maybe not. So, but still, pretty good ride line. But then the support cards is where like everything opened up. So, and I think the best way to look at it is on stream they showed weakest to strongest, and it gave this kind of like interesting build up, I guess. So they have a grade 3, which is basically the grade 2 from Varga's ride line, where it's like when it attacks, if this turn he was selected by your Al-K-Lra as effect, you Energy Blast 3, give him plus 15k, and end of the battle, draw 1, retire him. So it's the same as Boulder Axe Dragon, where he self-retires and draws a card, but this also is 28, but because you have to activate his effect by selecting him, which means you already got a 5k anyway. So he's 33 base no matter what, while drawing you a card for ED3. You're not using, so far, we're not using energy for anything else. There is a card that uses energy, but pretty good. For EB3, getting a card and a bunch of power is very good. Then, this deck has a countercharger in a grade 1 that basically says, when she boosts, if this turn she was selected by your Vanguard's effect, she gets 10k. And at the end of the battle, if you haven't countercharged yet this turn, she retires herself to countercharge 1. At this point, I was like, whoa, I don't like that she retires herself. And then they showed us an order that says if you have an Al-K-Lra Vanguard CB1, choose 2 cards from drop that are grade 3 or lower, that are different names, that both have the overcharge ability, and just call them back to rear. So I was like, wow, you can just countercharge every turn and just put it back. You can self-retire to draw a card every turn and just put it back. So you already have 2 different name cards that you're calling back with this order, which is just like, applause. Like that's perfect. And there's still 2 more overcharge ability cards that they revealed. So keep in mind that the ride line, both the grade 1 has overcharge, but the grade 2 does not. So you cannot respawn the grade 2, but you can respawn the grade 1. The Vanguard also doesn't have overcharge, so after you persona and you want to like call it as just like an attacker, you can't do that with this order either. They have to be overcharge units. Then we got a grade 1 double rare that on call, if you have 2 or more units with overcharge ability, CB1, draw 1, soul charge 1, which is very good. So as long as you keep using this and persona writing every turn, you won't run out of 2 soul. And when selected by your Al-K-Lra's effect, he also gets plus 10k. So he's just like the grade 1 of the ride line. So except he draws and generates soul, uses CB, we have a countercharger, we don't mind that. And then the grade 2 is during your turn if you have 3 or more overcharge ability units, which isn't too hard, but keep in mind that your Vanguard does not actually have the overcharge ability. So your overcharge units are only your rear guard. So it's actually, like other decks often say like, oh, if you have 3 or more of like something unit, it usually means including the Vanguard. This deck does not include that, so the 5k is a little bit harder to achieve, I'd say, but it's not tragic. But his overcharge ability is when he's selected by, so when your Vanguard attacks a grade 3, so this means like if Shoujo Doji on grade 2, rides Shoujo Doji grade 2, calls their grade 3 rear guard, you can swing into it even if you go first. But when your Vanguard attacks into a grade 3, if this turn this rear guard was selected by your Vanguard's ability, by your Al-K-Lra Vanguard's ability, Energy Blast 3, stand him and he gets plus 10k. So that means that if all of the effects are achieved, he's a 20k attacker on the first attack, not including boost, and then a 30k attacker on the second attack, which is pretty good. So you have 5 attacks, you have card draw, you have self-retire to draw, you have countercharge. If anything, what's surprising is you don't have retire in this deck yet. So it's already pretty good. It's already very different from other Dragon Empire decks where it's like, it's not an Overlord clone, it's not restanding, it's not retiring, which is also very different, but it's burning your opponent's face. And it's also, like, even going first grade 3 turn, all of these things gain power.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to guard. What's also really good is that because this has a dedicated order, this means that you can just slam 4 Shinies into the deck. And that means you're getting Soul from Shiny.
Yep.
You're getting card draw from Shiny. The only issue is that you're only using the order on your turn 3. So you're not going to be using Shiny early unless you're flooding your board, which I'm not sure if this deck wants to do that because a lot of the effects are like if selected by your Vanguard. So like turn 2, turn 1 might be a bit slow still. So that's like something to consider. Like technically the grade 1 double rare is like if you have 2 or more overcharged units, you get to, you know, put it out. So theoretically, you can ride grade 2, grade 1 of the ride line comes out, soul charges 1. That has overcharge. Then you call this grade 1, you now have 2 overcharged units, CB1 draw 1.
Yeah.
So technically early game is okay.
Yeah.
In theory. It's like, it's kind of interesting because the power gain, or like the if you have overcharged units effects of these cards, they don't ask for your Vanguard to be anything. They don't ask for your Vanguard to be grade 3, they don't ask for your Vanguard to be any name, they just ask to have the overcharged units on board. So for that reason, it's honestly quite cool, I think, the way they designed this deck. And it also means that you can run the Latifa, the grade 2 like order cycler.
Yeah.
To the, you know, because you have an order to play basically.
Yeah.
So I think the deck kind of builds itself, which is, in my opinion, kind of like a compliment in this sense because it's easy to prepare for it. So this and Wstra are probably like the 2 decks I'm by far most excited for in this set. And I'm so happy this deck is cool. Like I was so nervous that it would be bad because I was like, it looks so cool. It's my favorite so far of the divine skill units in this set. And I was really hoping that it would be good, and it's not disappointing. But yeah, sorry, I've been talking this whole time. What are your thoughts?
I was looking because, as you said, like the grade 2 and grade 1 doesn't require your Vanguard to pop the first effect. So actually, like you can play the early game as well because your the grade 1 call out, just you said, and then you call from the right 9, then you call the grade 1 to draw 1, and then the grade 2 when you call it, it already pops the 3 units.
Yeah.
For +5. So you're actually able to play the early game if you want. So
yeah, right.
I guess like this is like overall like you have everything in the deck. And like compared to the Stoichia one that the early game you have nothing to do, then this one actually looks really like very much well made.
Yeah, right. It's actually like the whole package is already there.
The only thing that I'm concerned about is the energy because the restander needs energy and then the draw one needs energy. So like you probably cannot pop them every time because you eventually run out of energy charge. Because we haven't seen anything that charge energy yet.
And Dragon Empire generically doesn't really have anything that charges energy.
So
outside of the grade 1 from Festival Booster, I guess.
Yeah, but the energy charge 1, so it does. You need 3 times to actually make it.
It's like it charges 1 and it works with discard effects, and this doesn't have any discard effects.
Yeah, so it's kind of like sus too if you want to run that, and because it doesn't have the overcharge effects as well. So but I do think you still want to run both of them as 4 because you do want more
just for overcharge
targets. Yeah, but I really like the order, like just call 2.
The only annoying thing about the grade 3 is that. The EB3 is both the power and the draw. I wish it gained the power and then you may Energy Blast 3 to retire and draw.
Because like, but from that, apart from that, like the whole deck, when you go first, the power line is insane. Like imagine you're going second and then your turn 2, you're holding 5 cards and then they do this. Looking at like every attack is like 30 plus, and then I just take all the attack and I just go to turn 3 by 4 or 5 damage.
Especially now when discussing this, like realizing that you can actually like use some of these effects early game, it's like my excitement for the deck went up even more.
Like especially like now the meta, like even Benny and stuff, you actually don't gain that much hand before your on turn 3. So like going second, turn 2 facing this is gonna be nightmare.
It's like the only issue is that you might use up a lot of your energy. But at the same time, it's like the restander doesn't work going first anyway. So
you might want to just go like and 33 call like a single attacker and then just draw 1 afterwards. Probably you don't like if you go first, you don't go for 5 swing on your turn 4 maybe, but you want to use this as you pull out early damage, then you just persona everything swing over for 40k and swing 4 times. You're probably just going to be game there.
Probably.
And you can also pop the 1 damage if they are not 4 damage yet. Or if they heal, you can just pop the 4 damage and then you just go for the game there as well.
Because going second turn 1 is a little bit sus.
Because
you'd have to put a lot of things down to like trigger the effect. Going first turn 2 feels really good in this deck. Into a very strong turn 3, into like a game-winning turn 4. So this feels like a very going first oriented deck.
Yeah, like if you do that, if you go aggro on turn 2, then you can put down Shinny as well, because then you have the board and then you just go into soul and draw one to gain back your resources. So
good.
Yeah, it sounds like from the early game to the late game, it's also the engine keeps going. It doesn't feel like there's something that lacking at this moment.
This is me, the Al-K-Lra player. This is you, the Livy Dress player. This is the future. But anyway, I think that wraps up our discussion of these first few weeks of Set 4 reveals. So next week, we'll have quite a bit to discuss. We'll have Leonor stuff. We'll have the generics. We'll also have the Dredjeweled support, which also is coming up as well. That deck has already been pretty good, so going to be interesting what they give it. And then we're also getting Zorga support, and we're also getting Alden Rideline as well. So quite a few cards to talk about. I think probably like over 10, and then there's also, of course, cards of the day. We skipped over a lot today, but I'll go over more in-depth thoughts during my first impressions once the time comes for that. But otherwise, let me know what you guys thought about the reveals in the comments below. What are you most excited about from the set that's been shown so far, or that hasn't even been shown? If there's a future ride line you're still looking forward to. And of course, if you like the video, give it a like. Also, check out Jason's channel. He makes videos in Japanese about a gacha game, but still give him support. And watch his streams where he does speak English.
Yeah, that's English. You can watch me climb like Master in Street Fighter
6. Yeah. So check him out as well. Otherwise, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And of course, if you want to support the channel, you can become a YouTube channel member. Check out a bunch of exclusive content, mostly of us fighting. And you do a lot in supporting and helping the channel grow. But with that, that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.